The darkness of space held many secrets, but none more haunting than the ghost of the UNSC Indomitable. 247 years ago, the massive supercarrier had vanished during the Battle of Proxima Centauri, taking 50,000 human souls with it. The loss had broken humanity's spirit and cost them the war. Admiral Sarah Chen had been a legend in her time. At 42 years old, she commanded the most powerful warship humanity had ever built. The Indomitable stretched 3 kilometers from bow to stern, bristling with weapons and carrying enough firepower to level a planet. When the Kryn Empire and their allies had pushed toward Earth's outer colonies, Admiral Chen and her carrier had been humanity's last hope. The battle had been brutal. Plasma fire lit up the void as human ships fought desperately against overwhelming odds. The Indomitable had destroyed 12 enemy cruisers in the opening minutes, its railguns tearing through alien hulls like paper. Admiral Chen had positioned her ship perfectly, using Proxima Centauri's gravity well to slingshot around and catch the enemy fleet from behind. Then something went wrong. Witnesses reported a strange purple light engulfing the supercarrier. Some said it pulsed like a heartbeat. Others claimed it looked like reality itself was tearing apart. In seconds, the Indomitable simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no debris field, no distress signal. The pride of Earth's fleet was gone. Without their flagship, the human forces crumbled. The Kryn pressed their advantage, pushing all the way to Mars before humanity sued for peace. The treaty had been humiliating. Earth kept its home system but gave up all colony worlds. Humanity paid massive reparations and accepted strict limits on military forces. The human race, which had dreamed of spreading across the stars, found itself caged in its own backyard. 2 more wars followed over the centuries. Each time, humanity lost. Each defeat added more restrictions, more penalties, more shame. By the present day, humans were considered a 3rd-tier species by the Galactic Council. They were tolerated but not respected, allowed to exist but never to thrive. Dr. James Rodriguez didn't care much about ancient history. As chief of the Deep Space Monitoring Station orbiting Neptune, his job was to watch for asteroids and catalog distant stars. It was boring work, but it paid well enough. Most days he drank coffee and let the automated systems do their job. That changed on a Tuesday morning, when every alarm in the station started screaming at. Once Rodriguez spilled his coffee rushing to the main console. His hands flew across the holographic displays, trying to understand what had triggered the alert. The quantum signature detectors, which measured the unique energy patterns of ships traveling through space, had picked up something impossible. The signature matched the Indomitable. Rodriguez checked the readings 3 times. He ran every diagnostic he could think of. The computers insisted the data was accurate. Somewhere at the edge of explored space, in a region called the Void Dark, sensors had detected the exact quantum signature of humanity's lost supercarrier. He immediately sent a priority message to Earth Defense Command. Then he waited, hands shaking, staring at the readout that made no sense. Ships didn't just reappear after 2.5 centuries. The Indomitable was gone, lost to whatever mysterious weapon or accident had claimed it. This had to be a mistake, a glitch, a cosmic joke. The response from Earth came faster than he expected. Admiral Marcus Webb himself appeared on the communication screen. The old man's face was weathered and scarred from 3 decades of military service. His eyes, though, burned with an intensity that made Rodriguez sit up straighter. "Show me everything," Webb said. Rodriguez transmitted all the data. He watched the Admiral's expression shift from skepticism to shock to something that might have been hope. "Is it really possible, sir?" Rodriguez asked. "Could the Indomitable actually be out there?" Webb was quiet for a long moment. 247 years ago, I was 5 years old. My grandmother served on that ship as a fighter pilot. She was 23 when she vanished. If there's even a chance, he didn't finish the sentence. I'm assembling a fleet. We leave in 72 hours. The news spread quickly through Earth's government and beyond. Within days, the Galactic Council caught wind of the human expedition. They were not pleased. The council chamber on the neutral station of Haven's Gate was an impressive structure. Representatives from 47 species gathered in a circular room where holographic projectors allowed everyone to see and hear each other. The Kryn delegation, reptilian beings with scales that shimmered like oil on water, occupied the largest platform. The Veltharian Concordat, tall and graceful with skin that changed colors based on their emotions, held the second most prominent position. Ambassador Sarah Kim represented Earth. She was a small woman who had learned to stand tall in rooms full of beings who looked down on humanity. When the Council demanded an explanation for Earth's military movements, she was ready. "We detected a signature consistent with one of our lost vessels," she said calmly. "We're mounting a recovery operation." The Kryn representative, Ambassador Zrith, hissed with what might have been laughter. "The Indomitable. We know of this ghost ship you chase. Your sensors are malfunctioning, human. The vessel was destroyed centuries ago." "Then you won't mind if we investigate," Kim replied. "We mind very much." This came from the Veltharian representative, Ambassador Lissa, whose skin had turned a threatening shade of red. "The treaty limits your military operations. You cannot simply send a fleet beyond your borders without Council approval." "The location is in unclaimed space," Kim countered. "The Void Dark is outside all territorial boundaries. We're not violating any treaty terms." The argument went on for hours. The Council members didn't want humanity poking around in deep space, especially not with military vessels. They cited security concerns, procedural violations, and diplomatic protocols. Kim stood her ground on every point. Legally, Earth had the right to investigate, and everyone in the chamber knew it. Finally, Zrith leaned forward, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. "Very well. Send your little expedition. When you find nothing but empty space and sensor ghosts, perhaps you will learn to accept your place in this galaxy." Kim didn't flinch. "And if we find the Indomitable?" "Then it will be a remarkable discovery for your museums," Lissa said, her tone making it clear what she thought of that possibility. "But let us be honest, Ambassador. Even if your ancient warship somehow survived, it would be a relic. Technology has advanced considerably in 2.5 centuries. The Indomitable, if it exists, would be no threat to anyone." Kim smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Of course, a relic. Nothing more. The Council session ended with grudging permission for Earth's expedition. As the ambassadors filed out, Kim caught fragments of their conversations. They were laughing, making jokes about human desperation and foolishness. Let them laugh, she thought. Let them underestimate us like they always do. She sent an encrypted message to Admiral Webb. "You're cleared to proceed. The Council thinks we're chasing ghosts. Prove them wrong." 5 light-years away in the deep dark between stars, something ancient stirred. The Indomitable drifted in a space that shouldn't exist, caught between dimensions, slowly bleeding back into normal reality. Inside its massive hull, 50,000 cryopods hummed with patient power. 47,000 were dark and cold. Their occupants long since passed into whatever came after life. 3,000 pods still glowed with soft blue light. 3,000 hearts still beat in frozen sleep. And on the bridge, in the captain's chair, Admiral Sarah Chen dreamed of home. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Void Dark. 5 ships emerged from the twisted space of FTL into normal reality, their crews eager and nervous. Admiral Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the UNSC Perseverance, a destroyer that was the most advanced ship Earth currently possessed. It felt inadequate for what they might find. "Report," Webb ordered. Lieutenant Commander Zhang studied his screens with intense focus. "Picking up the quantum signature, sir. Distance is 3 million kilometers. The signal is strong and consistent with records of the Indomitable." Webb felt his heart rate increase. A part of him had expected to find nothing, to prove the Council right about sensor ghosts and human foolishness. But the signature was real. Something was out there. "Take us in slowly. All ships maintain defensive formation. Weapons ready but not armed. I don't want to appear hostile to whatever we find," he rang. Fleet moved forward through the strange region of space known as the Void Dark. This area was famous among spacers for being empty, in ways that normal space wasn't. Few stars dotted the darkness here. No planets had been found, no asteroids, no comets. It was as if this pocket of the galaxy had been swept clean. As they approached the coordinates, the main view screen showed something that made Webb's breath catch in his throat. There, floating in absolute darkness, was the Indomitable. The Supercarrier was exactly as the historical record showed. 3 kilometers of human engineering and determination hung in the void. Its gray hull scarred by weapons fire but intact. The running lights were dark, but the ship's outline was unmistakable. Webb had studied images of this vessel his entire career. Seeing it in person was like watching a legend come to life. "My God," someone whispered behind him. "It's really here. Life signs?" Webb asked, forcing himself to focus on procedure. Zhang worked his console frantically. Sir, I'm reading active life support. Minimal power signature, but definitely operational. And, sir, I'm detecting cryopod activity. Some of them are still active. The bridge fell silent. Active cryopods meant survivors. After 247 years, some of the Indomitable's crew might still be alive. Webb made his decision quickly. Prepare boarding teams, full environmental suits and medical personnel. Zhang, keep scanning for any hazards. I don't want surprises. There's something else, sir, Zhang said, his voice uncertain. The ship's position. It's not exactly a normal space. The readings suggest it's partially phased into another dimension. Like it's stuck between realities. Is it stable? For now. But, sir, I think it's gradually shifting back into our dimension. That might be why we detected it. A week ago, it might have been completely undetectable. Webb nodded slowly. The Indomitable hadn't been destroyed in the battle. Something had pulled it out of normal space entirely. And now, after nearly 2.5 centuries, it was coming back. The boarding operation took 3 hours to prepare. Webb led the first team himself, along with Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, the fleet's chief medical officer, and a squad of Marines. They approached in a small shuttle, matching velocity with the massive carrier's slow tumble through space. The Indomitable's outer airlocks responded to their access codes. That was the first surprise. The ship's computer systems were still functional, still following the protocols programmed centuries ago. The airlock cycled properly, and the boarding team stepped into history. Emergency lighting gave everything a dim red glow. The corridors were cold but not frozen. The air was stale but breathable. Webb led his team toward the bridge, their footsteps echoing in the empty ship. They passed crew quarters where personal items still sat on shelves. Photos of families who had been dead for centuries, books that would never be finished. A child's toy sitting on a bunk. This is eerie, one of the Marines muttered. They found the first body in a corridor junction, a woman in an engineering uniform, her skin preserved by the cold and thin atmosphere. She looked like she had simply laid down to rest. Dr. Okonkwo scanned her with a medical tricorder. She died from injuries sustained in battle, the doctor said quietly. Looks like internal bleeding. She must have been trying to reach medical bay when she collapsed. They found more bodies as they progressed deeper into the ship. Not many, but enough to paint a picture of what had happened. The Indomitable had been damaged in the battle. Casualties had been heavy, and then something had pulled the entire ship away from the fight. The bridge was intact. The command chair sat empty, consoles dark except for minimal emergency power. Webb walked to the captain's chair and found a data pad sitting on the armrest. He picked it up carefully and activated it. The screen lit up, showing the personal log of Admiral Sarah Chen. Her face appeared on the screen, tired and determined. Webb felt a chill seeing his grandmother's commander speaking from beyond time itself. This is Admiral Chen, final log entry, the recording said. 3 weeks have passed since we engaged the Kryn fleet at Proxima. The weapon they used on us, some kind of spatial distortion field, has trapped us in what our scientists think is a pocket dimension. We've tried everything to break free, but nothing works. Power is failing. Life support is critical. I've made the decision to put the crew into cryosleep. If anyone finds this ship, if we ever make it home, know that we fought with everything we had. The experimental weapons in Cargo Bay 7 were never deployed. Maybe in the future they'll be useful. Tell Earth we didn't run. We didn't surrender. The Indomitable went down fighting, and by God, we'll come back fighting if we get the chance. The recording ended. Webb stood in silence, holding the data pad his grandmother had probably handled. 3 weeks. For Admiral Chen and her crew, only 3 weeks had passed since the battle. They had no idea that humanity had lost the war, had lost 2 more wars after that, had become a shadow of what it once was. Sir, we need to get to Cryo Bay immediately, Dr. Okonkwo said urgently. If those pods are still active, we need to assess the survivors. The Cryo Bay was enormous, taking up 3 entire decks of the ship. Row after row of pods stretched into the distance, each one a glass and metal coffin, designed to preserve life indefinitely. Most of the pods were dark, their occupants long dead from power failures or equipment malfunctions over the centuries. But some still glowed with soft blue light. Webb and his team moved through the rows, counting. 3,000, Zhang reported. 3,000 pods are still operational. 3,000 survivors. Dr. Okonkwo approached the nearest active pod. Inside, a young man floated in preservation gel, his face peaceful. "Vitals are strong," she said, checking the readouts. "He's healthy. They're all healthy. Sir, we can wake them up." Webb looked around at the rows of sleeping crew members. 3,000 people who had gone to sleep expecting to wake up victorious. 3,000 souls who had no idea how much the galaxy had changed. His eyes found a pod in the center of the bay, positioned on a raised platform. The nameplate read, "Admiral Sarah Chen, Commander UNSC Indomitable." "Wake her first," Webb said. "The Admiral needs to know what's happened." As Dr. Okonkwo prepared the revival sequence, Webb walked to the pod and looked down at the woman inside. Admiral Chen looked exactly as she did in the historical videos. Mid-40s with short dark hair and a face that showed strength even in sleep. His grandmother had served under this woman, had believed in her, had followed her into impossible battles. Now she was coming back to a world that had given up fighting. The pod's systems hummed to life. The preservation gel began to drain. Inside, Admiral Sarah Chen's eyes flickered beneath their lids. After 247 years, humanity's greatest military commander was waking up, and Marcus Webb had no idea how to tell her that Earth had lost everything while she slept. Admiral Sarah Chen woke up coughing. The preservation gel burned her lungs as she gasped for air that felt wrong, too thin, too cold. Hands grabbed her arms, pulling her out of the pod. She collapsed onto a metal floor, her legs weak and unresponsive. Someone wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. "Easy, Admiral," a voice said. "Take slow breaths. Your body needs time to adjust." Chen's vision cleared slowly. She was in the Indomitable's cryo bay, that much she recognized. But the people around her wore uniforms she didn't recognize. The man kneeling beside her had gray hair and Admiral's stars on his collar. Too old to be one of her crew. "Who are you?" she managed to ask, her voice rough. "Admiral Marcus Webb, Earth Defense Force," the man said gently. "You've been asleep for a long time, Admiral Chen. We found your ship 3 days ago." "How long?" Chen pushed herself up to sitting, ignoring the protest from her muscles. "How long since Proxima?" Webb hesitated, and that hesitation told Chen everything she needed to know. Something had gone terribly wrong. 247 years, Webb said finally. The words didn't make sense. Chen stared at him, waiting for the joke, for the explanation that would make reality fit back together. 247 years. Impossible. She had gone into cryosleep 3 weeks after the battle, expecting to wake up when rescue arrived or when her engineering teams found a way to break free from the dimensional trap. "The war?" she asked. "We lost," Webb said simply. "We lost that war and 2 more after it. Earth is restricted to the home system now. The Galactic Council keeps tight limits on our military forces." Chen felt like she had been punched in the gut. They had lost. All the fighting, all the sacrifice, all the blood spilled at Proxima Centauri had meant nothing in the end. Humanity had been broken and caged. "My crew," she said, forcing herself to focus on immediate concerns. "How many survived?" 3,000 in functional cryopods. We're waking them gradually. The rest, Webb didn't finish, but he didn't need to. 47,000 dead. Chen had sent 47,000 people to sleep thinking they would see home again. The weight of it pressed down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. Over the next week, Chen recovered her strength and learned about the galaxy she had woken up to. The historians and briefing officers spared her nothing. She learned how Earth had surrendered after Proxima, how the Kryn Empire had imposed crushing terms, how humanity had tried twice more to break free and failed both times. She learned that humans were now considered weak, barely worth the Council's attention. No human had commanded a significant military force in over a century. Earth's fleet consisted of patrol boats and old destroyers. The Indomitable was now the most powerful warship humanity possessed by a huge margin. And she learned that the Galactic Council wanted her ship. "They're calling it a historical artifact," Webb explained during a private meeting in the Indomitable's ready room. "They want to tow it to a museum station, strip out all the weapons and systems and put it on display as a curiosity." "Like hell they will," Chen said flatly. Webb smiled grimly. "That's what I told them. But Admiral, you need to understand our position. The Council can destroy Earth if they choose. We don't have the forces to resist. The politicians back home are terrified that your return will provoke a war we cannot win." Chen stood and walked to the window that showed the stars beyond. "Somewhere out there," Earth continued its slow decline into irrelevance. Her Earth, the one she remembered, had been reaching for the stars with both hands. This new Earth had learned to keep its head down and accept whatever scraps the galaxy threw its way. "What's in Cargo Bay 7? She asked suddenly. Webb blinked at the change of subject. "We haven't fully inventoried the ship yet. Why?" "Because before we went into cryo, my weapons team loaded something special into that bay. Experimental weapons that were never deployed at Proxima because we got caught in the dimensional shift before we could use them." Webb leaned forward, interested now. "What kind of weapons?" Chen accessed the computer terminal and pulled up classified files that had been locked for nearly 2.5 centuries. Webb's eyes widened as he read the specifications. "Quantum disruptors," he breathed. "These can tear through energy shields like they're not even there. And singularity missiles that can create micro-black holes. Admiral, nothing like this exists in the current fleet. This technology was lost when you disappeared." "Not lost," Chen corrected. "Just waiting." She turned to face Webb directly. "You said Earth is weak now. You said we can't fight the Council, but I have 3,000 trained crew members who remember when humanity didn't bow to anyone. I have a ship that's more advanced than anything currently flying, and I have weapons that can change the balance of power. The Council will see this as a threat," Webb warned. "Good," Chen said coldly. "Let them. I didn't survive 247 years in limbo to watch my species accept slavery." Word of Admiral Chen's defiance spread quickly through Earth's government. Some officials were terrified, demanding that the Indomitable be handed over to avoid provoking the Council. Others, particularly among the younger generation, saw Chen as a symbol of what humanity had once been and could be again. Chen didn't care about the politics. She focused on getting her ship fully operational. The Indomitable had suffered damage in the battle and from centuries of dormancy, but the core systems were sound. Her engineering teams worked around the clock, making repairs and running diagnostics. She also received an unexpected visitor. A young woman named Maria Santos arrived on a small shuttle, claiming to represent something called the Reclamation Initiative. She met Chen in private, away from Webb's oversight. "What exactly is the Reclamation Initiative?" Chen asked. Santos was in her 30s, with sharp eyes and the bearing of someone who had seen combat. "We're humans who believe Earth should be free, not just from Council control, but free to determine our own destiny. We've been working in secret for years, building resources, making contacts with other species who are tired of the Council's dominance." "That sounds like treason." "It is, by current Earth law," Santos admitted. "But Admiral, our grandparents knew a different Earth, one that didn't ask permission to exist. When we heard you were back, we knew it was a sign. You're from that era. You remember what we were?" Chen studied the younger woman. "And what do you want from me?" "Leadership," Santos said simply. "The Indomitable is a symbol, but symbols need someone to carry them. You could unite not just humans, but all the species that are tired of being kept down. The Council's power comes from fear and military superiority. You have the weapons to challenge that superiority. You have the reputation to inspire others to stand up. I'm a soldier, not a revolutionary. Right now we need both." Chen didn't commit to anything, but she didn't send Santos away either. The woman's words echoed thoughts Chen had been having since she woke up. The galaxy she remembered had been full of possibility. This galaxy felt small and afraid. 3 days later, the Galactic Council made their move. A Kryn battle fleet arrived at the edge of human space, 20 warships led by the dreadnought Triumphant Claw. They broadcast a message demanding that the Indomitable stand down and prepare to be boarded. "They're not asking anymore," Webb said grimly. "They're taking." Chen looked at the tactical display showing the Kryn fleet. Her own tactical officers were at their stations waiting for orders. The Indomitable's weapons were charged and ready. After centuries of sleep, the old warship was ready to fight again. "Admiral Webb, I want you and your ships to return to Earth," Chen said calmly. "We're not leaving you to face that fleet alone." "Yes, you are. If this goes wrong, Earth will need someone to speak for them, someone who tried to follow the Council's rules." Chen turned to her communications officer. "Send a message to the Kryn fleet. Tell them the Indomitable does not recognize their authority and will not surrender." Webb grabbed her arm. "Sarah, they'll destroy you. 1 ship against 20 is suicide." Chen smiled, and there was something fierce in that expression. "Admiral, my ship is 2.5 centuries more advanced than anything they're flying. My weapons were designed to break the Kryn fleet at Proxima, and we never got the chance to use them. Today we get that chance. This could start a war. No, Chen said quietly. This could finish one. The war that started at Proxima Centauri never really ended. Humanity just stopped fighting. But the Indomitable never surrendered, and neither did her crew. It's time the galaxy remembered that. Webb looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Give them hell, Admiral. Count on it. As Webb's fleet withdrew to a safe distance, the Indomitable turned to face the approaching Kryn armada. In the cargo bay, the experimental weapons that had slept for nearly 2.5 centuries came online. On the bridge, Admiral Sarah Chen sat in her command chair and felt the ship respond to her touch like a living thing. The Kryn fleet opened fire first, their plasma cannons lighting up the void. Chen watched the incoming fire with the calm of someone who had faced death before and wasn't impressed. Shields holding. Her tactical officer reported. Return fire, Chen ordered. Quantum disruptors, full spread. Show them what real weapons look like. The Indomitable's experimental weapons unleashed hell upon the galaxy that had forgotten humanity's strength. The quantum disruptors fired with a sound like reality tearing apart. Beams of violet energy lanced through space, striking the shields of the lead Kryn cruiser. The shields, which should have absorbed or deflected the attack, simply ceased to exist. The beams punched through the hull, tearing massive holes in the warship's armor. Direct hit on the Fierce Talon, Lieutenant Park reported from the tactical station. Their shields are down completely. Structural damage across all decks. Admiral Chen watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. The quantum disruptors worked exactly as designed, bypassing energy shields by disrupting the quantum field that generated them. Technology that was cutting-edge 247 years ago was apparently still beyond what the Kryn possessed now. Target the next cruiser. Fire at will. The Indomitable's weapons spoke again. Another Kryn ship shuddered under the impact, its shields collapsing instantly. The enemy fleet scattered, breaking their tight formation as they realized their defenses were useless. They're attempting to regroup, Park said. The dreadnought Triumphant Claw is moving forward. Sir, I'm reading massive power spikes from their main guns. Evasive maneuvers, Chen ordered. Don't let them get a clean shot. The Indomitable, despite its massive size, moved with surprising grace. The ship's inertial dampeners allowed it to change direction in ways that seemed to violate physics. Plasma bolts from the Kryn dreadnought burned past where the human carrier had been moments before. Launch fighters, Chen commanded. I want them to harass the smaller ships. Keep the Kryn off balance. The Indomitable's launch bays opened and 200 fighters streamed out. These weren't the advanced craft that current militaries used. They were older models, but piloted by men and women who had trained for the hardest war humanity had ever faced. The pilots flew with a coordination and skill that modern military forces had forgotten. The fighters swarmed the Kryn destroyers, their pulse cannons chipping away at armor and targeting weapon systems. 2 destroyers tried to pursue but found themselves outmaneuvered by pilots who had learned combat in an era when every fight was do or die. Sir, the Kryn commander is broadcasting a message, the communications officer said. Let's hear it. The face of a Kryn admiral appeared on the main screen. His scales were a deep red, signifying high rank, and his yellow eyes blazed with fury. Human vessel, you are attacking Galactic Council forces. This is an act of war. Stand down immediately or you will be destroyed. Chen leaned back in her command chair, utterly calm. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the UNSC Indomitable. Your council has no authority over this ship or its crew. We do not recognize your claim to control human space. Turn your fleet around and leave, or I will demonstrate exactly how outmatched you are. You dare threaten us, one ancient ship against the might of the Kryn Empire? Not threats, Admiral, facts. Chen nodded to Park. Target their dreadnought. Fire 1 singularity missile. The singularity missile launched from the Indomitable's forward tubes. It was a small thing, barely 10 meters long, but it carried a weapon that could change warfare forever. The Kryn dreadnought tried to shoot it down, but the missile's shields deflected their fire. It struck the dreadnought's flank and detonated. For a moment, nothing happened. Then space itself seemed to collapse inward. A micro-black hole formed at the impact point, its gravity well pulling in everything nearby. The dreadnought's hull buckled and tore as it was drawn toward the singularity. Secondary explosions rippled across the ship's length as systems failed and reactors went critical. The black hole lasted only 3 seconds before evaporating in a flash of Hawking radiation. But that was enough. The triumphant claw was dead in space, its structure too damaged to continue fighting. The rest of the Kryn fleet stopped their attack. Chen watched them on the tactical display, saw them reassessing, understanding that they faced something beyond their experience. "Leave now," she broadcast to the entire enemy fleet. "Tell your council that humanity is done following their rules. Tell them the Indomitable has returned and we remember what it means to fight for freedom." The Kryn fleet retreated. They left their damaged ships behind, including the crippled dreadnought. Chen let them go. She had made her point. "Stand down from combat alert," she ordered. "Damage report." "Minor shield damage already regenerating," Park said, his voice filled with awe. "Sir, we just fought a Kryn fleet and they ran." Chen stood and looked around her bridge. Her crew, these 3,000 souls who had been asleep while humanity fell, were staring at her with expressions of fierce pride. They had proven that the old Earth, the Earth that didn't bow to anyone, could still fight. "Good work, everyone. Now get me a secure channel to Earth. I need to speak with whoever's in charge." The message reached Earth within hours. The Galactic Council was in an uproar. The Kryn demanded immediate sanctions against humanity. The Veltharians called for a full military response. Smaller species watched nervously, uncertain what this meant for the balance of power. Admiral Webb met with Earth's president, an older woman named Catherine Morrison who had held office for 10 years. She looked exhausted. "The Council is demanding we hand over Admiral Chen and her crew for trial," Morrison said. "They're threatening to blockade Earth if we don't comply." "We can't do that," Webb said firmly. "I know. But Marcus, we're not ready for a war. The Indomitable is powerful, but it's one ship. The Council can field thousands. Maybe they won't have to field thousands," Webb said. He pulled up a data file and transmitted it to Morrison's screen. "We've been monitoring communications across the galaxy. Admiral Chen's fight against the Kryn fleet was broadcast on dozens of channels. The entire galaxy watched one human ship defeat a Council fleet." Morrison read the reports with growing interest. "These are messages of support. From Tellurian colonies, from Draxi merchants, from independent stations. They're all praising the Indomitable. The Council has spent centuries keeping everyone weak and divided," Webb explained. "They use fear to maintain control. But Admiral Chen just showed that the Council can be beaten. She showed that their fleets aren't invincible, and she did it defending human sovereignty, which is something a lot of species wish they had." Morrison leaned back in her chair thinking. "Are you suggesting we could find allies?" "I'm suggesting that Admiral Chen might have started something bigger than a simple battle." "The galaxy is watching, Madam President. What happens next could change everything." On the Indomitable, Chen was having a similar conversation with Maria Santos and her contacts from the Reclamation Initiative. The ready room was crowded with holographic images of people from across human space and beyond. "The Tellurian free colonies want to send ships to support you," Santos reported. "They're tired of Council taxation without representation. The Draxi Merchant Alliance is offering to supply your fleet with resources. And Admiral, we're getting messages from inside the Veltharian Concordat itself. There's a resistance movement there that wants to coordinate with you." Chen studied the data streaming across her screens. She had expected backlash from the Council, but she hadn't anticipated this wave of support. Her fight against the Kryn had resonated with species across the galaxy who were tired of being controlled. "How many ships can we count on?" she asked. "If everyone who's pledged support actually shows up, maybe 200 vessels. Most of them are small, outdated, but they're willing to fight. 200 ships against the Council's thousands. The odds were still terrible, but they were better than one ship alone." Chen thought about the decision she was about to make. She could try to negotiate, to find a peaceful solution that let the Indomitable exist without starting a galaxy-wide war. But then she thought about Earth, caged in its own system. She thought about humanity, reduced to a third-tier species that no one respected. She thought about all the other species suffering under Council control, waiting for someone to show them that resistance was possible. "Send a message to everyone who's offered support," Chen said. "Tell them to meet us at the Corsair Nebula in 1 week. We're done hiding. We're done accepting the Council's authority. It's time to show the galaxy what freedom looks like." Santos grinned. "You're really going to do this? You're going to start a rebellion?" "I'm going to finish what we started at Proxima Centauri," Chen corrected. "We were fighting for humanity's right to exist on our own terms. That fight never ended, we just forgot we were in it." Over the next week, ships began to gather at the Corsair Nebula. Earth sent its entire fleet, small as it was, under Admiral Webb's command. The Tellurian colony sent 43 warships, outdated but determined. The Draxi merchants arrived with armed freighters and promised more supplies. And others came too, species Chen had never heard of, all united by a common desire to break free from Council control. But the Council was gathering its own forces. The Veltharian Concordat mobilized its armada, over 500 advanced warships. The Kryn Empire, humiliated by their earlier defeat, assembled every ship they could spare. Other Council members added their forces to the gathering storm. The biggest fleet in a century was coming to crush the rebellion before it could truly begin. Chen stood on the Indomitable's bridge, watching the Allied fleet assemble around her flagship. The Council fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system like a wave of locusts. Over 1,000 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. At their center flew the Veltharian super-dreadnought Inevitable Victory, a ship that dwarfed even the Indomitable. The Council had brought enough firepower to level every planet in the system. Admiral Chen watched them come, standing calmly on her bridge. Around the Indomitable, 237 Allied ships held position. Behind them, Earth itself hung in space, blue and green and fragile. 3 billion humans lived on that world. Unaware that their fate was about to be decided in the next few hours, they're broadcasting a message, the communications officer said. Put it through. The Veltharian fleet commander appeared on screen. Admiral Cyrix was an imposing figure, his skin shifting through shades of deep purple that indicated absolute confidence. Admiral Chen, this fleet represents the combined military might of the Galactic Council. You and your rebels are outnumbered 5-1. Surrender now, and your crew will be treated as prisoners of war. Resist and we will glass Earth itself. Chen met his gaze without flinching. Admiral Cyrix, I have a counteroffer. Turn your fleet around now and we'll let you leave with your ships intact. Continue this attack and I'll teach you the same lesson I taught the Kryn fleet. Cyrix's skin flashed red with anger. You cannot win this battle. Accept the inevitable. I spent 247 years learning that nothing is inevitable, Chen said. Fire on my fleet and you'll learn that too. The channel closed. Chen turned to her crew. All ships battle formation. Stay tight and watch for my signal. We're going to show them what happens when you threaten Earth. The Council fleet advanced. Their formation was perfect, a demonstration of superior numbers and coordination. They expected the rebels to scatter, to break formation when faced with overwhelming force. Instead, the Allied fleet held position, waiting. Admiral, they're charging weapons, Lieutenant Park reported. Wait for it, Chen said calmly. The Council fleet opened fire. Thousands of plasma bolts and energy beams lit up space. It was beautiful and terrible, a display of raw military power meant to intimidate and destroy. Now, Chen ordered, execute maneuver Chen 7. The Indomitable's experimental shields flared to life, projecting a massive energy barrier that covered the entire Allied fleet. The Council's weapons struck the barrier and dissipated, absorbed by technology that was centuries beyond anything the current galaxy possessed. Impossible. Someone whispered on the bridge. Nothing's impossible, Chen said with a slight smile. We just needed to make them commit to the attack. Park launched the Singularity missiles. Spread pattern, target their capital ships. 20 Singularity missiles launched from the Indomitable's tubes, arcing through space toward the Council fleet. The enemy tried to shoot them down, but the missiles' shields held. They struck 20 different targets, and 20 micro-black holes bloomed among the Council's formation. The effect was devastating. Ships were pulled from position, their formations collapsing as gravity wells disrupted everything. 3 Veltharian cruisers collided with each other, trying to escape one singularity. A Kryn destroyer was torn in half by tidal forces. All ships, advance, Chen broadcast to the Allied fleet. Hit them while they're scattered. Aim for weapons and engines, disabled, don't destroy. We want prisoners, not martyrs. The Allied fleet surged forward. Earth's destroyers, old but well commanded by Admiral Webb, struck at the Council's flanks. The Tellurian ships focused on the Kryn forces, repaying centuries of humiliation. The Draxi merchants, their armed freighters surprisingly effective, disabled dozens of smaller Council vessels, and the Indomitable moved through the chaos like a shark among fish. Chen's tactical team had studied every battle record from the wars humanity had lost. They knew the Council's tactics, their formations, their weaknesses. Now they exploited all of it. Target the inevitable victory, Chen ordered. Quantum disruptors, full power. The super dreadnought shields were the strongest in the galaxy, capable of absorbing incredible punishment. The quantum disruptors ignored them completely. The beam struck the massive ship's hull directly, carving deep wounds into its armor. Admiral Cyrix broadcast a desperate message. All ships converge on the Indomitable. Concentrate fire. Hundreds of Council ships turned their weapons on the human carrier. The barrage should have destroyed it instantly. Instead, the Indomitable's shields held, absorbing and deflecting the onslaught. Chen had powered the shields by routing energy from non-essential systems. Her ship could take punishment that would destroy any other vessel in the galaxy. They're going to realize we can't keep this up forever, Park said quietly. They don't need to know that, Chen replied. Helm, take us into the center of their formation. Right down their throat. The Indomitable accelerated directly toward the Council fleet's center. It was a move of either genius or madness, or perhaps both. The Council ships scattered to avoid collision, their formation breaking completely. That's when the rest of Chen's plan revealed itself. Ships began emerging from faster-than-light travel all around the battlefield. Not Council ships, but rebels. More Tellurian colonies had sent forces. The Draxi Alliance had brought their entire merchant fleet, hundreds of vessels armed and ready to fight. And there were others, species Chen had never heard of, all answering the call for freedom. Reinforcements arriving. Park reported, his voice filled with awe. Count is now over 600 ships. Sir, we're not outnumbered anymore. Admiral Webb broadcast from his destroyer. Chen, you magnificent bastard. You planned this the whole time. Chen allowed herself a small smile. The Council expected a battle. I gave them a rebellion. The Singularity missiles weren't just weapons, they were a signal. Everyone watching the battle saw them fire. That was the sign for our allies to jump in. The tide of battle shifted. The Council fleet, expecting an easy victory, found itself fighting for survival. The rebels fought with desperate courage, knowing this was their one chance at freedom. Ships were destroyed on both sides, but the Council was losing. Admiral Cyrix made one last attempt. The inevitable victory, damaged but still operational, charged its main weapon. It was a planet killer, a beam that could burn entire continents. He aimed it at Earth. Chen, he broadcast, surrender now or I destroy your homeworld. Chen didn't hesitate. Target the inevitable victory. All weapons. Fire everything we have. The Indomitable unleashed every weapon in its arsenal. Quantum disruptors, plasma cannons, railguns, and the last of the Singularity missiles. The combined barrage struck the super dreadnought at the exact moment it fired its planet-killer weapon. The weapon's beam veered off course as the ship shuddered under the impact. Instead of striking Earth, it burned through empty space. The inevitable victory's reactor went critical, and the massive ship exploded in a flash that briefly outshone the sun. The Council fleet broke. Without their flagship and with losses mounting, the remaining ships retreated into faster-than-light travel. In less than 2 hours, the supposedly invincible Council fleet had been defeated. Chen stood on her bridge, surrounded by her exhausted crew. Around them, the Allied fleet was cheering, broadcasting victory messages. Earth itself was sending signals of celebration and disbelief. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Haven's Gate, the communications officer said. It's from Ambassador Zarith of the Kryn Empire. Put it through. The Kryn ambassador appeared on screen. He looked old and tired. Admiral Chen, the Galactic Council wishes to negotiate terms. There are no terms to negotiate, Chen said firmly. The Council is dissolved. Its member species are free to form whatever alliances they choose. But the era of enforced dominance is over. Any species that threatens Earth or our allies will face the Indomitable and everyone who fought with us today. You cannot enforce this across the galaxy. Watch me. Chen leaned forward. You spent 2 centuries keeping humanity weak because you feared what we might become. Today you learned that fear was justified. We're not going to conquer anyone. We're not going to build an empire. But we will defend freedom, for ourselves and for anyone else who wants it. Is that clear? Zarith bowed his head slightly, a gesture of submission among his people. It is clear, Admiral. The Council will adapt to this new reality. The transmission ended. Chen turned to find Admiral Webb's face on another screen. "Sarah, you did it," he said, and there were tears in his eyes. "You gave humanity back its pride." "I just finished what we started at Proxima," Chen said. "The question now is what we do with this victory." Over the following weeks, the galaxy reorganized itself. The Galactic Council officially disbanded, its member species forming new alliances based on mutual cooperation rather than enforced hierarchy. Earth became a founding member of the Interspecies Alliance, a coalition dedicated to protecting freedom and sovereignty. The Indomitable was offered a place of honor in orbit around Earth, a museum and monument. Chen declined. "This ship isn't a relic," she said. "It's a promise that humanity will never stop fighting for what's right." Instead, the Indomitable became the flagship of the Alliance Defense Force. Admiral Chen accepted command, though she insisted that half her crew be given the chance to retire if they wanted.